to Puck and Pigskin YYC. Just great sports fans talking mostly about Calgary Flames hockey and Stampeders football, sprinkled with a bit of everything else. Now, here's your host, a Flames fan with a Knights and Kraken backup plan, Jason Bysick.
All right, joining me now from the Calgary Sun and Herald, I believe, Danny Austin covering the Stampeders and Flames. Danny, how's it going?
It's going really well, man. I'm excited to be talking to you. It's always good to talk some Stamps. We're coming off a bye week here, so this gets me back thinking about it before they start practicing again tomorrow.
Yeah, it's nice to be talking about them now as opposed to 4 or 5 weeks ago when things were looking kind of grim.
It's crazy what they would have played. They were 2-5 going into that sort of early October game with Saskatchewan, and it was all doom and gloom, but what a difference a month makes. Both Stampeders got hot, and then both Edmonton and BC haven't won a game since then. So It's been a good 6 weeks. Suddenly it's like it felt like the playoffs were going to be super hard, and now they almost feel inevitable, right? So
yeah, they're sitting 6-6 right now behind the Riders at 8-4, and of course Winnipeg. Nobody's catching Winnipeg, so
yeah, that's an awfully good team in Winnipeg. I mean, I honestly wish that we were in a position, just like with the scheduling, the Stamps played the Bombers so early, played them pretty tight. It was nobody's pushed Winnipeg other than the Argos team that beat them the way the Stamps did this season. But I wish we got one kind of like in the last couple of weeks, so both teams were firing on all cylinders, so we could see how they match up. But I actually like that matchup for the Stampeders in the playoffs. So I'm very curious. I do not. I covered this team in 2016, 2017, and 2018. Like, I know that a lot of good, seemingly unbeatable CFL teams are actually quite beatable come playoff time, as unfortunately Stampeders fans know. So I'm looking forward.
Yeah, like early, it seemed that fans were kind of angry after those earlier losses to Toronto and BC, and then maybe not so angry after the Labor Day Classic, because it seemed like people were almost kind of getting into the groove of losing, if that sounds like something to say in Calgary.
It's bizarre, right? But I mean, I've talked about this a couple times, but like the weird thing for me as a reporter is, I was talking to Dave Dickinson and John Hufnagel before the season started. Like, they did not expect to come out and be firing on all cylinders. They knew they had to build, right? Like, so yeah. I do think that, the frustration with that week 1 loss to the Argos and then that week 2 loss to the Lions was, I think they thought they'd win one of those. Like, I think that they didn't expect the performances necessarily to be that much better, but those were both games that they probably should have won. The BC game, Foley Mitchell was playing with a fractured fibula, so maybe they shouldn't have won that one. But the Argos game, I mean, Kadeem Carey has been great all year. His one fumble came in the fourth quarter deep in Stamps territory. That's the only reason the Argos won that game, was sort of that one mistake. But I think that they expected to win those, which would have put them in the hunt to really have a chance at knocking off the Riders. And unfortunately, those losses sort of, in a 14-game season, every loss looms pretty large, and those ones certainly have. But, a lot of that frustration from fans, me as the beat reporter, it's not my job to defend the team, but I was sitting there and I was trying to say to people, like, guys, this is what they said. They said they'd start peaking in midseason and build for the playoffs. And, like, I'm not trying to be a homer. I'm not trying to say anything other than what it is, but, like, they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do. So it's sort of interesting in that way.
Yeah, like after those first 6 or 7 weeks, I myself were kind of discounting them. They just weren't firing and weren't exciting me like they usually do. I'm curious to know as a beat reporter, and I don't know if you're a big fan or not, but what were your thoughts at that point? Like, had you discounted them, or did you actually think that they would turn things around?
So there's a couple key points in the season. Okay, first of all, I'm not a fan. I do try to be objective.
That's fair.
Obviously, I have an affection for the guys, right? Like, there's a huge difference between covering hockey and football, and one of the big differences is that the football players don't seem to hate you for asking basic questions. So I obviously, what do you want me to say? Like, I'm happy for them when they win. It doesn't necessarily ruin my day if they lose. But I will say I didn't think those first 2 losses were a big deal. Like, I wasn't ruling them out. I just there was too much talent. Where I began to worry was when they dropped to 2-5 after falling to Hamilton.
Yeah.
That was a weird game because Kamar Jordan went out in the first half, and you really saw how important he was to this offense because, like, Bo Levi Mitchell just was not good that game. And you could tell that he just didn't have the confidence. He didn't have that chemistry with the receivers. And that's where I began to really think they were in trouble. In part just because in a 14-game season, you don't have much time to recover, right? So, like, coming out of that loss, like, they just had no room for error. Or if they had room for error, they had 3 games against the Riders coming up. They could afford to lose one of them and still make the playoffs, but not get to second place. And that's ultimately what's happened. But they were a changed team. They had a bye week after that Ticats, and I honestly, like, the hard thing to do with CFL is talk coaching because it's such a weird sport. But I honestly do think if Dickinson said this, is that they, like, the coaches had some real long meetings trying to figure out what they were good at and how to, like, really focus in on what they were good at and cut out some of the things that were hurting them. And I think that, like, we've seen that. And again, it's not my job to tell fans what to think, but so they beat the Riders twice, then they beat BC, and then they lost to the Riders. And I just couldn't believe the anger from some fans. Do you know how hard it is to beat? Like, the Riders are not a bad team. Beating a team three times in 4 weeks, I mean, that's tough in football. Like, that's like that. Football is so much about adjustments. Football is, and the losing team always has the advantage because they're the ones who goes and fixes things where the winning team doesn't have to. So I didn't think that loss hurt them in terms of getting to second place. You want to see a home playoff game, but I think they're more than capable. So they've really, since that low point, the turnaround's been pretty remarkable. And I think that I think their defense is as good as anyone in the league. And I think that we are seeing progress on offense. And I think that this Reggie Begelton addition is going to do wonders. I think it's really going to make a big difference.
Yeah, like taking those 2 out of 3 from the Riders. I mean, I was happy taking 2 out of 3. I honestly was not upset they lost the 3rd game because I was just happy they took the 2. Exactly. And a couple of those games earlier in the season were very close games. I mean, how often does Rennie Paredes miss a 50-yard field goal, right? I mean, there's one game there, and then Bo Levi throws just a bad interception at the end of that BC game, I think it was. And, those are 2 different results there, right?
I mean, the Lions game in week 2, that was the one where he had the fractured fibula, which again, you can't say that it's it's a fracture, but, like, I do think people thought he, like, treated it as if he, like, snapped his bone. Like, no, there was a little crack. Like, He was back. He didn't do the full 6 games, but, like, he had 4 interceptions. He was bad that game. The third Riders game, he had 3 interceptions. He was pretty bad that game, if I'm being honest. He's had a couple tough games, but it's just weird to me. Like, I've honestly never really seen there are a lot of fans who just are waiting every time he makes a mistake just to jump on him. And, like, this is a guy who, like, he's getting better as the season goes on too. He was out for a year and a half. Football players are creatures of habit. He didn't have that routine. And he had surgery and then missed all of training camp because of a groin injury. Like, why was anyone expecting this guy to come in and look like the best player in the league right now? Like, it just was never going to happen. And if you, like, I'm going to sound like a jerk saying this, but, like, if you understand anything about athletes, it's that almost like they're often very boring people. They have to be up early. They have a routine. They work out hard. They eat the same thing. Losing that for a year for a guy in his 30s, like, was inevitably going to mean that Bo had a few growing pains this season. It honestly was. So it's like, if you know anything about athletes, like, it's understandable. And you can't actually look around this league. Tell me what quarterback's been great. Like,
no,
has been fine.
Wow, like, Zach Claros.
Yeah,
yeah. Let's chat. You're talking about Bo a little bit there, and how they're kind of boring characters, and they work hard and stuff. And I think Bo has that big superstar, stereotype, and I think everybody thought he was going to come out firing. I personally didn't. I knew it would take a few games, but he's looked really good since then, though. The last few games have been pretty good. Last game, I think he threw 3 picks, but I mean,
well, that would have been the Riders. He looked good against Ottawa. He didn't throw any picks against Ottawa.
Yeah,
They had 1 turnover. It was when the game was out of hand. Ante Milanovic-Litre fumbled it. I know they really wanted a 0 turnover game there, but he has been looking better. And I mean, a big part of that is just Kamar Jordan being back. He missed 3-4 games. Him being back just makes a huge difference because he's one of those guys who they have that built-in chemistry that you build over years. But yeah, I don't know that Bo has been physically right all year. He's admitted that surgery he had sort of at the end of 2019, maybe his shoulder didn't respond quite the way he'd hoped. So I do think like we're probably going to see over the next couple of weeks them play a little bit safer, not do some of those sort of Dave Dickinson describes them as being intermediate passes. So it's sort of those like 13 to 18 yard passes where they seem to be having trouble. Because he looks great when he's bombing the ball downfield. Like he's had a lot of big throws, probably more than anyone. But it's those sort of intermediate that he seems to be having just a little bit of trouble. He's underthrowing it a lot. But it's been better. The numbers have been better. The picks are obviously a concern, and you don't win in the playoffs if you turn the ball over in the CFL. I'm not going to downplay that. That's real. But yeah, he's looked better. I think, like, honestly, if I was a Stampeders fan right now, you win or you lose in the playoffs. That's what it comes down to. And it's entirely possible that a pretty good Riders team gets the better of them in that West semifinal. But I think this team is better than Saskatchewan. So I think they're in the West final. And I think they're in the West final against the Bombers. And all Bo has to be is good. I don't think he has to be great.
Yeah.
Good. You have to not turn the ball over, and this defense will keep you in it. And I think they've got they're in with a decent shot against that Bombers team. I really do believe that. And we just it's weird because I'm not putting it all on Bo. I do think people need to give him a little bit of a break. I think he's been better than some people would like to say he has. But ultimately, everything else looks pretty good right now. The running game looks good. The O-line looks good. The defense looks great. It's the best special teams unit in the league. So you're just waiting for that passing game. And that's, again, where Reggie Begelton comes in. And I just think he's such a game changer for them.
Yeah, that kind of leads me to my next question is how big was the return of Trey Roberson and how big will the return of Begelton be? I think they're going to be pretty solid going the next couple weeks here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll argue that Begelton's a bigger signing than Roberson. Not that he's a better player. That's not that. And I actually don't want to go down that road. I don't know who I think is a better player. The defensive backfield, so Trey's obviously the boundary corner. Trey, before he had a concussion in 2019, I don't think there's any question that he was the best boundary corner in the league, and that's such an important position. So he's obviously the type of player you want on your team. It's just I think Deshaun Amos and Raheem Wilson were doing a great job boundary side as is. So that's sort of improving an area that was already a strength. But I do think it's huge, and I do think he's a guy who he goes up and gets the ball. He really is an NFL talent. A little bit of bad luck there because he was a quarterback in university. He had to come to the CFL and work on his game as a defensive player a little bit, but I think he did that, and that just meant he went to the NFL a little bit older. So he had to take his shot when he did, and it didn't work out, and he's back. But that shouldn't be a takeaway. That shouldn't take away from what he is as a player. So that signing is huge. The thing with Reggie Begelton is he had the second most receiving yards, maybe the third in the CFL in 2019. He was the star in 2019. He was the most outstanding player nominee for these Stampeders. He runs so well. He's got a different body type. He can take contact and get those extra couple yards. And he's fast. He's got great hands. He's exactly what the Stampeders need. Him and Kamar Jordan do play the same position, so I'm going to be a little bit curious how they work out that. But I put on Twitter probably a month and a half ago, I was okay, take every NFL player who's formerly been a Stampeder and you can add them to the Stamps roster. And Stamps fans being Stamps fans, they're all going to say, well, we'd want Alex Singleton. I thought it was Reggie Begelton. I think I think he fills a hole that this team had. He really, really does.
Yeah.
He's exactly what they've been missing.
Yeah, I agree. Begelton does fix the hole because I think that we need a bigger player like that on offense than we do on defense. Our defense seems not too bad at the moment. So
defense is great. The defense is great. When you can get a player like Trey Roberson, you get him. Like no argument here. I'm just like, the one thing that they've been missing is someone else other than KJ who really is stepping up. And I think Marky Ambrose and Josh Huff have been good. They just have been a little bit inconsistent, and they're not they don't seem to have that take the game over mentality that a guy like Bailton and a guy like Kamar Jordan do. So, yeah, I mean, they've never released Josh Huff, which is unfortunate. He was a good player, but yeah, and you honestly, the hole that this team has is that like the problem has been the passing game exclusively. Like, I think the defense is, if you wanted to say it was the best in the league, I wouldn't argue with you, but otherwise it's the second best behind Winnipeg, and I don't think there's any question.
Yeah, and you mentioned releasing Josh Huff, and that was actually going to be my next question for you. Is there anything else behind that I don't know about? Because he was having not a bad season.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, okay, there's no vaccination issue. My understanding is Josh Huff wasn't going to he didn't want to go take a practice roster position. He's got NFL experience. He believes that he's got another shot at the NFL, so he was the odd man out. And
okay.
And he didn't want to do practice roster, so you got to release him. And from his perspective, it likely means he gets a head start on being able to go and try for some NFL opportunities and sort of connect through his agent with them. From the Stampeders' perspective, they weren't just going to put him on the one-game injured list,
right?
Because that has salary cap implications.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I've been. I apologize. I need to drink some water here.
No worries.
The question everyone had was this related to his COVID vaccination status? And the answer is no. He is double vaccinated. That is not what is going on here. So
I hadn't even thought of that. So
yeah, trust me, people on Twitter did.
Yeah,
I'm not like until the playoffs, because come West Final, guys who aren't vaccinated aren't going to be able to play. But like, I made a decision not to comment on who's vaccinated and who's not until it matters. Until it matters for what happens on the field. So, but I had to go in with Josh Huff and clarify that, because there were just this rumor started on Twitter, and you know how Twitter is. It was like, even though no one was saying that it's definitely true, you could tell it was becoming accepted. So I did need to clarify that.
Yeah. So speaking of the playoffs, we're heading into uncharted territory this season. We're having some late playoffs and a December Grey Cup. How weird is that going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be bizarre. It's weird. Like West Final, honestly, I don't think in the prairies, like in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, I actually don't think sort of mid to late November versus early December makes a huge difference. It's either cold or it's not. And like once we kind of hit mid-November, it can be -30 or it can not be. So I don't know that that's going to be that bad, but like, I'm from Toronto. Southern Ontario Southern Ontario in early December is a lot colder than Southern Ontario in late November. So so it's gonna be bizarre. I mean, I don't know, I'll be honest, as a reporter, like, I'm just going until the season's done. And like, if the Stamps win the Grey Cup, I'll probably come back to Calgary. If the Stamps aren't in the Grey Cup, I'll probably go see my family for Christmas. Like, so it doesn't make a huge amount of difference for me, but we can pretty much guarantee that weather is going to be a factor in terms of who wins the Grey Cup this year. That's pretty much guaranteed. And it'll be interesting. I don't know from like a wider media perspective, like, it's only like TSN's not a practice. Like CBC is not a practice. TSN's the only one that's like notable there because they supposedly invest so much in the league. But like, I mean, the two, Mark Steven and Matt Rose, the two radio guys, and me will be there, whether it's December or January or February or March or June. We don't care. We'll be there. So from a media perspective, but yeah, it'll definitely means takes me a while before I really start focusing in on hockey. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, both teams have to play in that cold, so it's not like the East teams know what it's like to play in late December either. So
no, that's true. It's
mid-December.
This is weird because like the West semifinal in 2019, like this is sort of why I say that November, December, I don't think it makes a difference for the weather. Like Stamps hosted the West semifinal in 2019, and like it was freezing here. A week later, it was like +6. Like, and I wonder how the Stampeders would have done in a better weather game. I still think the Bombers win. You got to give them credit, but like the Stamps really struggled with the temperatures. Like they struggled to throw the ball. Nick Arbuckle at one point told me that he went in on a short yardage play and he literally couldn't feel the ball in his hands when it was insane. But the Bombers seem to deal with it just fine. So, both teams have to play in it, but some teams are better at it.
Yeah. So let's break away and talk kind of general CFL talk. Last year and a half or so has been really chaotic CFL wise. There's been a lot of talk of what's being done to promote the league and the XFL coming in and then not coming in. And what's your take on the last couple years of the CFL and moving forward? Do you think the CFL can overcome all the negativity that it's had in the last year and a half or so and kind of turn things around and market the game better?
I struggle with the marketing thing. I don't think that marketing is actually an issue.
Okay.
For this league, like I think that apathy in Toronto and Vancouver is a much bigger threat to this league than any like perceived negativity, to be perfectly honest with you. Like I can't tell you how much people just literally don't care. Like it's not like people are aware that the Argos are playing and are deciding, oh well, we hate the CFL. They just don't pay attention. And like, guess what? It's really expensive to market anything in a city Toronto size. It's really hard to like find your piece of the pie. And I keep hearing people be like, well, MLSE has all this money. It's like, how much money are they going to spend on marketing a team to get an extra, like, there has to be a payoff for that. And a lot of people don't see it. So I think that the CFL, I think that the people in that office are doing the best they can. I struggle at times with, it feels like half the time the CFL wants to be treated like it's a big time professional sports league. And then they're basically like, well, we're a mom and pop shop whenever like they're criticized for falling short. And I really wish that they wouldn't do that. But no, I think I don't think that ultimately them missing 2020 as a season. I know that I'm sort of going off on various tangents here. I don't think that them missing 2020 was all that big a deal for most fans. Like it sucked. We wish we had CFL. It's sort of embarrassing that it was the one league that couldn't figure out a way to do it. I wish that it's certainly put into focus when Randy Ambrosie shows up every year at the Grey Cup and tells us how amazing the league is doing and that they're in great financial shape. It's like, well, you were lying to us. But I don't think that this league can afford to play without fans, so 2020 being canceled is fine. And I honestly think most people got over that, and we're just happy to have the product back. The XFL thing, I think, is more damaging. I have said this numerous times, but it sounds as if the Argos were kind of the drivers behind that. The Argos are owned by Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment is basically a partnership between Rogers and Bell. If the Argos are pushing it, that means Bell's pushing it. Bell owns TSN. What does that tell you about what the major financial stakeholder seems to want for the CFL? That really scares me. I think that when you market your league, the best thing that this league has going for it is its Canadianness. The strength of the league is the fact that it's uniquely Canadian. We don't have many things in this country that are just ours. The CFL is one of those things. So I think that public flirtation with the XFL hurts that because it says that Canadianness isn't enough, that we need to partner up with the Americans again. And if you partner up with the Americans, like, who are we kidding when people are like, oh, well, maybe they'd keep 3 downs? No, they wouldn't. Of course they wouldn't. We would be playing American rules. And I'm not actually even saying that playing American rules would be the worst thing. I'm not even necessarily saying that I don't think that's a move that they should make. But we have to admit that we're selling out the league. We're selling out the traditions. We're selling out the Canadianness. And I think a lot of fans felt that. And I think a lot of fans were resentful of the way that those merger talks were covered by a lot of people. And I think that was really damaging. But ultimately, to bring it back to my very first point, I'm far more worried seeing 6,000 people in the stands in Toronto Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment is not going to prop up an Argos team that's bringing 6,000 people to the stands. I don't know why that game was on a Wednesday night, but it was. If we lose Toronto, we probably lose Montreal. If we lose Toronto and Montreal, this league's done. So I don't think it's a marketing issue anywhere else in the country. I think that this league is losing ground fast in by far the biggest market in this country. There is no, Calgary is the fourth biggest city, but our population, the total of Calgary's population is 1/10 the total of the Greater Toronto Area.
Yeah.
So that's where the money is in this country. That is where the population is in this country, and we need a team there. And I don't think it's a marketing issue. I honestly don't. But yeah, that's where I worry about the league.
Yeah, and you can tell that it's Toronto fans ultimately don't care because they're first place in the East Division right now, so they should be drawing fans. Obviously, people don't care, which is why people aren't showing up.
Yeah, well, I've said, my parents, I'm not from Markham or Mississauga. I'm from Toronto, and my family always comes to the Argos, the Stamps game in Toronto, and I'm embarrassed. I don't want them to come. I want them to come to a game in Hamilton or Ottawa where there are actually fans in the stands, but nothing about it just makes it worse when you go to a game and there's no fans there. You feel oh, this is not the cool thing to do. This is lame. Nobody's here, and then you don't go back. So it's I don't know how you fix it. It's chicken and egg, man. It's it's brutal, and of course, when I'm home, all my friends are asking me about the CFL, all of that, but they have no idea. I don't think they can name a player.
Is it because Toronto's so big and there's so much other things to do? Is that 100%. What?
100%. You've got 81. Yeah. You got 81 Jays home games every year. You've got the Raptors. You have Toronto FC. You have if you have other interests, there's a huge theater community, one of the best in the world. There's so much to do in that city.
Yeah.
So you're fighting for entertainment dollars. And I will say that I don't this is, and I honestly I don't blame the Argos for any of this. I think it's an impossible situation. I think that there's no one who I think does better work on the social media side than the Argos team. I honestly have all the time in the world and respect, and it's a dream of mine to one day cover that team because it's my hometown team, and I love, I grew up, and I'm only 37. 20 years ago when I was in high school, we didn't go to every game, but I can tell you when the East Final came around, all my buddies were all going down. We cared just enough. It's not like that anymore, man. And
yeah.
I keep hearing people say, I've seen these arguments and it's you do have to understand the market, but I see people be well, why don't they do this or do that or get billboards up or do that? And I'm hey, it's 2021. Most advertising should probably be going to Instagram.
Yeah.
Secondly, a billboard's not going to make the difference here, guys.
No.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about getting people who care zero. We're not talking about that fan who goes once a game and you're trying to work the analytics to get them come to 3 times a game. We're talking about people who could not name a player on the team, don't care that they exist, trying to get them in. It's a completely different job than it in the market. And when people say, oh, well, it's Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. No, it's not. Montreal draws good crowds when that team's good.
Montreal draws crowds.
Montreal supports a winner. They really do. So
and BC used to sell out. They used to get good crowds in BC.
Yeah, and maybe they got the back. That team's been pretty bad for a while now. But Vancouver is another one of those cities. It's a different culture, and I'm not comfortable talking about Vancouver the way I am about Toronto because I'm from Toronto. I know that market, right? So, Toronto is a completely different issue than Vancouver and Montreal.
Yeah. We got 2 games left. BC and Winnipeg, right? Is that?
Yep.
Yeah. So
we have BC this coming Friday in Vancouver. That's a game. Obviously, the Stamps put a beating on the Lions last time they played a couple weeks back. And honestly, the Lions are spiraling right now. So that's. I mean, it's must win because you have, I mean, win and you're in the playoffs. Like that's literally what it is.
To make the playoffs, right now we're 4 points back of the Riders. However, the Riders have Edmonton, so that's a win right there.
I checked the Riders' recent schedule after going into the third Riders game. Yeah, they have Edmonton and the Ticats, so like they're not losing to Edmonton. No one is losing to Edmonton. Like, honestly, like you and I could suit up for Edmonton and we'd put in more effort than this year's Elks team.
If there was one game I wanted Edmonton to do really well in, this would be it, because I think the Ticats could beat Saskatchewan. I really do think that.
For sure. And they may have to, because they may have playoff positioning. But relying on the Elks, come on. It's not. So look, I honestly, I'm like going into that third Stamps Riders game, I honestly felt whoever won that game was getting second place. I just didn't think either team was going to lose again, because the Stamps have Winnipeg in the last game of the season, but like that game is going to be completely meaningless for the Bombers. They're likely not going to be dressing Zach Collaros. Like they're going to be in protect and preserve mode a little bit. So the Stamps the Stamps should win that game. We always try to make it be some sort of controversy. 2016, 2017, 2018, the Stamps didn't dress anybody for their last regular season of the year. It's just not necessary. So, So I think the Stamps win both, and I don't think it's enough, because I think the Riders win both, and that's that. Or no, I don't think the Riders win both. I think the Riders win one of two, lose both.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see how things turn out. Now, if you don't mind, and I know you're not into full hockey mode, but let's talk a little bit about the Calgary Flames, who are going off right now. Like what's going on?
I mean, it's hard for me to think that this is anything other than the Daryl Sutter effect, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like he clearly has them working. So I was covering the team full time last season. And like Sutter was pretty clear when he showed up. Like day one, maybe he didn't take shots at Jeff Ward's preparations, but after that, he really, really did, constantly. And I honestly, like, the impression that Sutter gave us last year was that the team wasn't in shape, that they weren't in good enough shape, and they hadn't worked hard enough in training camp to be in that shape to play at the speed that they needed to play at. And now you're seeing it, with Sutter just putting them through the grinder. And I think that, like, you're also seeing the players seeing results, right? And suddenly they're starting to be like, oh, maybe this is why other teams don't hate Daryl Sutter, because he gets results. He gets you working. And I think you're seeing that confidence. I mean, I joked about it on Twitter. It was just so funny to me last night, seeing everyone freak out about the Kachuk through the legs. And I was like, all right, it was a cool goal, but like it would have been cooler if we hadn't seen him miss 12 times last year. Like, like, good lucky number 13. He finally landed it. But I also, like, I don't know why I felt the need to say that. Calgary fans.
Well, but on the flip side of that, everybody was going off about the McDavid goal the other night when he does this like once a week. Like, why is it so surprising now?
I know. It's that I actually did have that, like, obviously an amazing goal, but it was like people being like, oh, this is his best ever. I didn't understand that. I was like, he literally undresses entire teams. Like, it feels like every second game. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad.
Yeah. And also, upon second and third looks, Ottawa's defense did nothing to stop him.
Was that Ottawa or was that New York?
Or not Ottawa, sorry, New York.
Yeah, no, they were all up. But I mean, that's the scary thing about McDavid is you can be left flat-footed so quickly because he can go from 0 to 60 and he's on you. So like, that was. I mean, that goal was spectacular, and so was Kachuk's. And like, honestly, like it was miserable covering that team last year. Like, no fans in the stand, and you're showing up, and they're just losing, and like, they can't do anything. Like, it was not particularly fun. No one should feel sorry for them. I mean, my job is ridiculous, but like, so like, I'm happy for those guys, man. Like, I'm happy that they're finding a little bit of success.
Yeah.
The problem is, I mean, we're all so surprised by this because they were so bad last year, and like, people should be enjoying it. I will say, going into last year, we were all like, yeah, but can they win in the playoffs? And that's the thing that, like, this Flames group has just, they can do whatever they want in the regular season. I'm not judging until you get through the first round at least once.
Yeah, I think the reason why it's so good right now is because typically Octobers have not been well for us ever,
Yeah, that's
dating back quite a while. So having a hot October was good. It's good to see all of the big guys that Sutter brought in doing well, except for Zadorov. He's not obviously doing
yeah, that's
too
crazy,
hot, but
right? I mean, this is just two guys talking. This is not like, as I said, I'm not covering the Flames until probably January, and I'm not paying that close attention. But like, so the Zadorov thing it's definitely surprising. It doesn't really make sense to me, but I don't know. You do like there is talent in this defensive group, right? Like I think we know that. Like we know Noah
Mhm.
Hannafin, and like I think Hannafin took a huge step last year. I think you really saw him, but like I am surprised. I'm surprised that this group is playing as well as they were because I thought they made a lot of small moves, but the big thing that happened to them
Yeah.
was they lost Gio, and I thought they were worse coming into the season than they were coming out of last season as a group. And hey, I was wrong. Got to admit it. So
Yeah. I hate to say it because I like Gio, although I'll admit Gio is getting up there and it was, it's nearing the end of his career, but I still liked him. But I haven't really been missing him.
I mean, isn't that the way it always is with these guys, though, right? Like, I'm the biggest Raptors fan out there. I was devastated when Kawhi left.
Yeah.
Then I kind of liked the way we played without him, and like I
So
liked.
were you devastated when Lowry left?
No, I was happy for like
No.
It was time for us to move on. It was time for everyone to move on. Like, I'm a big. This is so like Danny the English major. Sometimes things end and you're just happy for the experience that you had. Whether that's like a relationship, whether that's with an athlete. I'm happy. Lowry he's older. We're not going to win a championship this year. Go take your shot. What you did for that organization. I grew up a Raptors fan who was miserable until Kyle Lowry arrived and he changed everything. So yeah, whatever he wants to do. He could literally come up and stab me in the back. And I'd be like, well, if it makes you happy, man, like, thanks. Please pull the knife out of my back. But yeah.
Now you say they're not going to make the playoffs, but they're on a roll right now, aren't they? 6 in a row. Have they won 6 in a row? I believe.
Oh no, sorry, I just meant win the championship. They're not.
Oh, okay.
They might make the playoffs. They'll be in the mix, but like they're not a championship team. And they weren't going to be this year. So you're an older guy, Kyle Lowry. Go help Miami win a championship. It was as long as it wasn't Philly, because like that's the thing as a Toronto guy. Like I'm only not okay losing to Philly or Ottawa. Ottawa can't be like I don't even really cheer for the Leafs. I grew out of
which
that.
Which is good.
Like I think that deep down I would like to see them win a Stanley Cup in my lifetime. But like I do not watch the Leafs. I don't follow them. But like if they lost to Ottawa, I'd be really pissed. And then I just can't have Toronto teams losing to Philly teams. Like those are the rules.
Yeah. So being a big Toronto guy, are you a Jays fan as well?
Yeah. Again,
okay.
Okay. Ask away. I'm gonna try
here. So they missed the postseason by a single point or a single win, right? Mm-hmm. Any one of those games that they blew could have made the postseason. Is it worse missing by just that much, or would you rather not even be close?
Oh, it's way better to be close. Like sports are silly. Like sports give me like a couple weeks of entertainment, even if we fall short. Like that's what I want. Is just like you become an adult and other things get in the way, and you don't feel that like childish passion for things. And then sports give you those. So I'd way rather be in the fight and lose than that's across the board in sports. Like serve me up heartbreak over mediocrity. Like, so yeah, I don't know. I got basically a month and a half where I was like constantly checking scores or watching, and I was in love with the Jays again. And that was awesome. I don't know. It's a bummer. I think we would have won the World Series if we'd won literally one game earlier in the season. But here we are. We're going to win a World Series in the next 3 years. It's going to happen.
Now, the big question, of course, going into the off season and coming up season is, are they going to be able to afford Simeon and Ray? Are they going to make that happen somehow?
After what they put the fans through with this rebuild, yeah, like when you've done the rebuild and you're a contender, you got to spend the money. That's the deal for ownership. And the other thing is, like, we saw this in 2015 and 2016. Like, fans, like Jays fans across the country, not just Toronto people, were always like, if you spend and give us a contender, you have the biggest home market of any team in Major League Baseball. Like, you'll get that money back that you spend because this whole country cheers for the Jays. It's like, and we saw that with the Raptors. Like, yeah, there's no excuse. Go, pay them. It's like, it's time for Rodgers to go spend big, and like, you're not going to outspend the Dodgers, like that's not going to happen, but you got to pay to keep your best players, and you got to pay to have a contender, because you can't do 4 years of losing saying this is the way to become a contender and then not do it. That's not
now I'm not a huge baseball fan. Does MLB have a hard salary cap just like the NHL, or
no?
Okay.
No, I don't. Honestly, like, I don't exactly know how it works, but it's 100% not a hard salary cap.
So if you want to buy a team, you can buy a team.
The LA Dodgers have bought a team, 100%. And like, I think athletes should get paid. Like, I honestly, like, I'm never rooting for the owner to have more money in his pocket. The owners are already billionaires. I don't need them. But like, the way that baseball, like, the money is insane right now. And basically, like, it's basically just the Dodgers. Like, no one else can afford Mookie Betts' salary, but the Dodgers can. So, like, it's not great, but it's still, I don't know. Jays have so many big bats, we can beat anybody. Yeah.
All right. Well, we covered a lot of sports there, so that's the good thing about kind of rooting for so many different sports and teams is, if one disappoints you, the next one's playing soon anytime.
And again, my whole thing, like, I'm at this point, like, I'm particularly during football season, I'm just such a passive fan. Like, I honestly, like, I was saying to you, like, when I get done my, like, 8.5 hours of work, I very rarely am like, what I want to do now is put on a game. So, like, I go out for drinks, watch games like that. But, so it's easy. Like, I'm as big an Arsenal supporter as I am a fan of any other team. And that's just because it's on Saturday mornings and it's not after work. So, yeah. I don't know.
It's much more fun trolling people on Twitter anyway.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I've toned down the trolling a little bit, but
it's all in good fun.
Exactly.
All right. Well, it was great talking to you, man, and we'll definitely talk to you again. Maybe once the playoffs start, or maybe after. We'll get your thoughts after the season's all over. For sure. I'd love to do it, man. This was fun. Thank you for having me on. So I'll put all your socials down below, and we'll definitely talk again. Rad, buddy. Awesome. Have a good one. Thank you so much. This was fun. Appreciate it. All right. Excellent. Have a great one, man. Everyone is looking at me. Time is running and we're down by 3. Look inside yourself. What do you see? The pain is in your mind. No, nothing stops me. Everyone is looking at me. Heart is pounding and we're down by 3. Look inside yourself, I know what I see.